Trains. Huh. What are they good for? Long distance transportation over rail network infrastructure. But do you know what else that trains are good for? Bringing people together, whether loved ones or family. And just letting them, go.
And what's this? Huffing its way into the back of the station. It's Switch and Signal, designed by David Thompson of co-designing fame for Undaunted and War Chest. And this has been kindly provided for review by Cosmos. It's a cooperative game for 2 to 4 players that sees you trying to load up a bunch of goods into trains and then transporting them to their destination before time runs out and the nuclear bomb explodes. Don't believe me? Check the manual. Anyway, it's honestly a terribly simple game, so if you excuse me for a moment before we begin, I'm just going to sit here and talk about trains. Trains, eh? Cool. Bicycles, great. Cars, fine. Planes, whatever. It's trains that go hard and heavy with the vibes. It's the great puffs of steam, the people in unlikely hats blowing little whistles, running alongside a leaving train, waving goodbye through the window to a loved one. If you did that to somebody who was driving a car, they presume that they'd left the handbag on the roof or something, or a coffee. It just doesn't work. Get out of here, cars. And yet so few of the very many board games about trains actually feel like they're about trains at all. You're building networks or businesses. It's about tapping into the excitement of growth, converting these grand expanses of nature into lucrative spider webs of pure business, crunching out endless opportunistic growth. But in all of this, we so often see the mighty train relegated to nothing more than iconography, just another plastic piece placed to signify control. Sure, we may all make the choo-choo noises when we place those pieces on the board. But do we really feel that choo-choo? Do we really feel it? In this world in which trains have been sadly stripped of their agency. What does that mean? Trains are exciting and cool because they're also slightly frightening. Don't believe me? Ask the passengers of the very first ever passenger train in the northeast of England, September 27th, 1825. Passengers were so unnerved when the train reached a staggering speed of 15 miles per hour that one of them fell off the train and broke his foot. Thankfully, with clever logistics, this danger can be safely controlled, and the same can be true for huge amounts of our modern world. But the difference is with trains is that danger is still very visible. They can't be encased in the safety of dull beige plastic. It is a huge metal thing that goes really fast, and if you need to stop it quite quickly, well, you can't. And Switch and Signal, this very simple family game, absolutely nails trains. Each round you're going to draw a card from the "You're running out of time" deck, which adds new trains to the board or moves some of those trains, or both. Trains come in 3 flavours: fast, medium fast, and are you sure it's actually moving? With 3 different dice to control their different movement speeds. Finally, we've got a deck that you'll draw from which contains hardly any cards, just 3 types of cards: switches and signals and trains. On your turn, you can play as many cards as you like, but you can also hold on to some of them for future turns, with a generous hand limit per player of 10. Switch cards let you instruct this miserable gentleman to pull a lever at a junction, altering the way that moving trains will then be directed. One card changes one junction, and you can wiggle it into any configuration that you like. Signal cards let you reposition one of these green light tokens around the board, opening up a route whilst closing another, an essential part of entering and leaving city stations, in which you can always spend any card to place a cube into a train's tiny little backpack. Finally, we've got train cards that let you roll a dice and move one train of your choice by that many spaces. a level of control that's not offered by the cards that you're going to draw at the start of each turn, which force you to move all trains of a certain colour, one after another, at the same time. I'll admit I have a small complaint here about the design of the iconography. This striped train symbolises that players can choose any of the 3 colours, but the perspective on the image leaves the black section of the train a little bit slivered and obscured. 3 different types of card. 1 card gets you 1 action, and with a final rule that at any point you can just discard 2 cards to do any of those 3 actions if you're a bit desperate. And spoilers, you will end up being quite desperate. Oh no. Because time is not on your side. And each time something goes wrong on the board, you're going to add a tiny clock to a big clock. And when that big clock fills up, you'll reset it, but lose a card from the small deck that acts as the game's countdown timer. And what could possibly go wrong? Well, spoilers, trains can't smash into other trains. That's bad. Also, broadly speaking, bad is any point at which a train is supposed to slow down and stop, and doesn't slow down and stop. Trying to move through stop signals, frowned upon. Still going at quite a high speed at the point at which you reach the end of the line. In the world of trains, it's quite the faux pas. And you'll be punished with another little clock for every space the train was supposed to move but didn't. Oh gosh, that's a lot of clocks. I'm sorry, little train. I didn't mean to harm you. But damn if train stations aren't an absolute godsend. I mean, I've always been a big fan of train stations, personally, if I'm honest. The terrible cafes, the benches that smell like piss. You know, the violence, the implied violence, the toilets that have been closed and padlocked for so long that you're not entirely sure if they were ever open. Or sometimes train stations don't have anything. They're just 2 slabs of concrete where a train briefly stops and there's nothing there, no buildings for miles. There's a sign that says something like Lower Peverley upon Bottom, and you don't know where that is, and you've lost your phone, and you're so hungover. Why not visit the United Kingdom? But these train stations in these cities on the board in the game are an absolute godsend. It doesn't matter how fast your trains are turbo-trundling into town, they stop. They don't crash. They just stop peacefully and nothing bad happens. But then you forget to change the signals around the edge of the city and it has to move again and it's going straight back out again to the end of the line it just came from and Thankfully at the start of the game there aren't that many trains on the board for other trains to crash into until later in the game where there are. There's a really fun rhythm here that's different each time you play. This event deck is erratic and it means that in some games you're going to end up having tons of trains on the board really quickly, which is stressful but also really good, because you can be getting all of these deliveries to the right places very rapidly. We had one game where for the first half of it, there were barely any trains, and we were having a lovely time just leisurely moving them around, delivering things very safely. But we were running out of time, and then at the end of it, when all of the cards that actually put new trains onto the board finally came up, it was like being waterboarded by Thomas the Tank Engine. And these trains can appear in any of these numbered spaces around the edge of the map, but they won't. Whenever you have to add a train, its starting location is determined by a roll of 2 normal dice, just innocent dice. This means that it's a weighted distribution. Yes, you've got 12 and 1, but it's very unlikely trains are going to appear there. They're going to keep appearing at 5, 6, 7, and 8. And if you've ever played the game Pandemic, the truly classic cooperative puzzle that sees the world joining together to combat a global disease, if you can imagine such a thing, then you'll already see a few similarities here, with the early state of the game giving you a good idea of where the problems are likely to bloom in the future. And it means that statistically, you know, when you've got number 2 down here, I think it said it went to 1 earlier, and that's not a thing, that's not how dice work, I apologise. You've got 2 and 12 over here. You can just block off those routes because it's very, very unlikely that trains are ever going to appear there. But if you do that, then they will, because games. And that is the whole entire potato. You each take it in turns to have some control with the cards in your hand before then you don't have control over a new event that happens. And you're constantly bouncing back and forth between these 2 states of fixing problems and then having new problems. There's no downtime, there's no stopping to read a card and working out what happens. It's all simple, immediate, and pure. You're just racing against this upward curve of knowns and unknowns as things escalate. And it's all just about finding that right kind of pace. Do you hold on to cards and collect up a bunch of them, knowing that in the future you'll be able to get yourself out of a pickle, or do you play it fast and loose and burn through cards just to get things done quickly, to get those deliveries made early? Honestly, this feel of pacing is such a vital part of like all good cooperative games, in my opinion. Gloomhaven is a fantastic example. That is a game in which your enemy effectively is a timer and your own lack of ability to gauge when it's going to run out. And the same is true here. You've got to get all the deliveries done before the time runs out. How fast and loose are you going to play it? If you go too slowly, then you're never going to make it. But if you go too fast, then you're going to crash. As you may have already clocked, I really love this game. I was immediately grabbed by it and I enjoyed it a ton more than I expected to. I mean, I'm not really into trains, but apparently I am. It just took a train game to show me that, a real train game. Tom, can you please leave the room? It isn't as smart or as rich as Pandemic, which is a game in which, yes, you're trying to work out the probabilities that things might go bad next turn, but you're doing that in the context of a wider board, of other factors. It's not as simple as binary bad and good. There's a texture there, which this game doesn't have. It's much, much simpler. But I'd still compare this alongside lots of other cooperative games that are kind of in that area. It does an awful lot with a little. And gosh, it just conveys the terrifying power of trains. They're moving around. Sometimes they're moving so slowly that you want to shout at them and you feel like they're never going to get to their destination. And at other times they are frankly motoring around horrifically as you jumble around trying to rapidly adjust all these tracks, hoping that you can just make it so that everything slips by each other without colliding. And it's joyful. I would really recommend Switch and Signal. I'm not sure how much longevity you'll have in terms of playing it again and again with the same people, but maybe I'll be surprised by that. Obviously, you can flip the board, and there's a whole different location which has 2 different ports you need to be delivering to, and you also have these tokens that allow you to randomize the starting locations for trains. I just feel like if you want a co-op game that you can play a lot, then I would really recommend looking at Pandemic Legacy, which obviously is a kind of one and done, but it's a very long one and done, or even something like Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, or big original Gloomhaven, but it seems ridiculous to be comparing all of these things together. Now, I think this is just solid and fine as it is. A lovely, exciting cooperative puzzle that I think you can put in front of anybody and they'd have a great time. It reminded me why trains are cool, and it's weirdly rare that board games are actually able to do that, and they should do it more often. Shame on you, board games. Shame on you. Trains. That's the end of the review. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be leaving in a minute. My train out of here should be here. It's actually a bit late. Should be here in about... Should have been here 2 minutes ago. Oh, here it comes. Yep. Bye. Okay, bye. Yeah. See ya. Bye.